Hi, my name is Michael at Full Sail, and for today's assignment, I'll be doing a post-mortem for my overall project. So I've already done a video kind of talking about the project itself, but that was just the first week. I still have to upload milestone 2, but this is due today. So now that the project is over, it's time to talk about the good and the bad. Now, as you may or may not know, the point of the prototyping class is to form a team with other game design students and work together to rebuild a reference game. My team decided to go with Dark Souls 3. Now, I've said this before, but the easiest thing to do would probably be to choose an old platforming game like Crash Bandicoot or Mario, but those aren't really my kind of games, and I wanted to put together something different or something you wouldn't expect to see. And since most of the team has played Dark Souls 3, that's the direction we decided to take. And with all that being said, let's talk about the good of the project. So, what went right? First thing that went right, I'd say, is teamwork. From the start, we've been able to talk to each other and come to an agreement on things like what we should work on. And we've all been working on our tasks and we've been getting them done. When I met 3 new people this month, that I've never gotten the chance to work with. I've seen a lot of good work from them, and I'm really impressed with what they've brought to the table. I love it. The second thing that I'd say went right is networking and communication. When I say networking, I mean, talking with other students and keeping in touch and all that. So, one thing that's important to know is that 2 of my teammates that are on my team currently, we were on a previous team together in a past class, and we actually won a mini competition that required good teamwork, communication, work, and effort, and a lot went into that class. So keeping in contact with them, even in classes that didn't require, a team to get together, keeping in touch with them helped give us an idea of how this month was going to go. So the third thing that I'd say went right is our problem solving skills. Now, there were a lot of issues with bugs and reference exceptions and errors that were popping up all throughout the project. And there were a lot of moments that made me think, man, I'm a freaking genius. Or, man, I got such a big brain. And, etc., etc. Looking at all the logic and trying to make sense of things made me feel super smart, and it was rewarding when things actually worked, let me tell you. I figured out how to get the enemy to attack, because we were having an issue where the collider was staying on the player and he was taking damage consistently, but now we have it to where he slices, you take one thing of damage, same for the player, you hit them once, they take damage when you hit them. Good stuff. Those were some of the highlights of me working on the project. Oh, and also there was another thing with the boss. I was trying to get him to stay still while he's attacking, that way you can actually dodge out of the way. And I figured all of this out through animation events. So again, big brain moments. The fourth thing that I'd say went right, I'd say, is just the learning experience. I learned a lot from this class in just this one project. This is the first project that we've had to build from scratch, like from the ground up. And I've always expected that, if I were to make my own project, I'd be able to start and do it with no sweat. And, because after all, I'm going to school to be somebody who can do that. So starting with this class, I now know that it is 100% possible for me to start prototyping my ideas and seeing if they work in concept. See, if I were working by myself, probably not a lot would get done, but that allows me to know my limits, and I know what it's like to work with a team of other designers and people who are trying to achieve the same goal. So I can compare that to my own experience when working by myself, and I can understand what's in scope and what's not in scope. And I've also learned a lot about coding and concepts, like how convenient and useful events and animation events are. I've gotten a lot of ideas for future prototypes and projects and all that, and I'm really excited to try those out. Alright, so the last thing that I'm going to go over with things that went right is the end result. So overall, the project was a big success. One of the main things you need for Dark Souls is a nice big boss to fight. And even though it's just a prototype, when you walk through the doors and you hear the music start playing and you see a big guy come towards you with a big sword, it's just really awesome. And we were able to achieve that. And I really like that part of the overall prototype. I also love the spin attack that has you manage your stamina, so you have enough to either block or jump over the projectiles. I like the fact that you can also use the level to your advantage to recover and get out of the way of the projectiles if you need to. There were a lot of good things that came out of this project, and again, I'm just really proud with how the overall result turned out. So I've already said this before, but the biggest issue is Perforce and how we all use it. I think for the most part I understand what we've been taught, and I feel like I can use Perforce without any issues myself, but when it comes to explaining things and concepts, I'm not really all that good at that. I think that comes down to my communication skills. If I'm working by myself, I'm able to take my time and figure things out as I need to, but if I'm working with someone else, I feel a sense of added pressure to be right about things all the time. And when I'm wrong or I don't know what the answer is, I kind of just shut down. And so I will elaborate on Perforce issues a little bit more in this video. There were a lot of times where somebody's work would get overridden, or some things will work specifically on one person's end, but not on somebody else's. And like a good example of that is I had working checkpoints that would start you at the position of the checkpoint that you went through. And when the scene would reload, it would start you on top of that. So for me, that worked sometimes. Like when the scene would end, sometimes it would start there, sometimes it wouldn't. And then when somebody else went to test those changes that I uploaded, it just wouldn't work at all. And for whatever reason, I couldn't figure out if it was the editor, if it was Perforce, and it was just kind of sucked. But it is what it is. The second thing I'd say that went wrong is a little bit of organization, and I'd say that on my part. So I can't keep a single thought for like even a second. So if I'm working on one thing, I'll think of something else that needs to be worked on, and then I'll end up not finishing what I was working on before. And so there were a couple of times where I had a script that I was working on and I would leave it to go work on something else, and then when I came back, it just got changed and I didn't know what to do with it because those changes were kind of interfering with what I had before. So I would just end up leaving it alone and just leaving it. So that was just kind of a little downside there. All right, now the third thing that I'd say went a little wrong is the task list. Now when I say this, I'm not saying it to critique the class or anything, but something that really bugged me about the class is that we went through all the trouble of learning Confluence and Jira, but in this class they just gave us a Google sheet that had requirements and everything. So I would have loved to continue using Jira and Confluence for the actual assignment itself, but it kind of felt pointless since we were handed this Google sheet to use. And I had already started a Confluence and Jira page like from day one to get it started, and I was going back and forth between the two. So like at some points I was going to the document in Google, and then I would go back to Confluence, and there would just be like a lot, like something might have been on the Google Doc and something might have not have been on the Confluence, and it was just a lot of back and forth there. But it got to the point where I didn't know if I wanted to go to the Google Sheet or if I wanted to continue using the Jira page that I had set up. So I'll also say that there was a little bit of confusion on the tasks themselves, and this confusion I think lies mainly with me. But sometimes there were things that I was working on, but they were assigned to somebody else, and I just didn't see it, or it got changed, or I just wasn't paying attention. And I wasn't sure if for the assignment if we were allowed to share tasks or not. So I wasn't really sure what to work on sometimes. So there was just a little bit of confusion there for me. All right, the next thing that I'll say went wrong is Unity. And I've come to realize that I'm not the best at coding and scripting, but it's something that I can do to a certain extent. And when it comes to watching all these tutorials and documentations, I just kind of get lost sometimes. And sometimes I think Unity is just being a jerk for no reason. Like sometimes the logic will make perfect sense. And then when you try to go and implement it into Unity, it just doesn't want to do it for whatever reason. So that kind of sucked. So the last thing that I'd say went wrong for this milestone or for the overall project is the bonfires that we were trying to work on. So bonfires were actually on both milestones, and it was giving me and my teammate Scott the most trouble. Checkpoints for the bonfire is the task that I was working on, but this was something that was apparently assigned to Scott, was working on the bonfires. So the first thing I was thinking was to get a checkpoint system up and running, so I watched a helpful tutorial that gave me a way to have the player's last checkpoint position be the current checkpoint position, and then when the scene gets reloaded, the player is supposed to spawn on top of that position. But I got it to work on my end, and I uploaded those changes. And when I gave it to Scott, I was like, "Hey, I got some checkpoints up, so you can probably use that for the bonfire." Apparently, it wasn't working on his end, and then it wasn't working on my end anymore, and I don't know what happened. It was just one of those things where it was working and then it wasn't working, and I couldn't tell if it was Unity just being weird or if I didn't upload something that I needed to. But that kind of sucked, like, a lot. So Scott started looking for his own methods to get a checkpoint system working, and at this point we're both just trying to look for a way to get these checkpoints working, but in the end we just weren't able to get it to work properly. We ended up reverting it back to just having it so that the player reloads with the scene, so everything spawns back after you die, like in Dark Souls, but the only thing is you don't have a checkpoint that you start at. So that was very unfortunate that we weren't able to get that working properly, so that kind of sucked. Overall, I'm really proud of the work I did for this whole project and the effort I put into making sure that, I did my part in making a successful project. I love how the project looks. It's really cool when you combine what everybody's been working on. I've learned so much in just 1 month, and I can't wait to start making another project from the ground up, and even, just getting new ideas from things that were unintentional, but, just so happened to work. And for example, like adjusting the movement and wondering if it's a good idea to make a parkour platforming game, or a parkour platforming action game, or anything like that. I'm glad to have met the people that I have this month. It's given me a feel for how the actual industry might be when I actually start working with a group of people to work on something even bigger. And you know what? I can't wait till that happens. So yeah, I'd say that I have definitely grown a lot over the past month when it comes to this project, and when it comes to being a designer, a coder, a scripter. We're supposed to make things easier for ourselves as designers so that we can make, good systems, and so I can say that I didn't do that at all, but from the experience that I've gained by making a project like this, I now have ideas that I need to implement to my future projects, like managing things through events or through event controllers, things like that, animation events. I really want to see if I can make a combo system or anything like that. So if anything, this class has given me more motivation to try new things, to use what I've learned, specifically from different tutorials, different documentations, and things that I've actually put into the project in this month. So overall, again, I said overall like a couple of times, but yeah, this is a very good experience for me, and I'm glad to have taken this class.